All right, everybody, let's hit the Week 16 rooting guide. This is a big one. We have a lot at stake this week with the Seahawks with regard to these other games because with the win last week, we've really kept hopes alive. And don't get me wrong, the Seahawks will almost certainly make the playoffs if they win out. But it's not yet guaranteed, so we need to think about that. We also need to think about the scenario if we lose one of these last three games. Can we still get in? What'll it take? What should we be rooting for in these non Seahawks games? So let's talk it through here. And we're going to start with one of the most difficult ones of the entire year, I would say, with this Thursday night game later tonight. Saints at Rams. This is hard because we know the Rams own the tiebreaker over the Seahawks no matter what. That is immutable. It cannot be changed because it's based on head to head. So if the Seahawks and Rams end up tied and there's a playoff spot up for grabs, we know for a fact that the Rams get in. Now, here's the issue. The Rams get the Giants, probably with Tommy DeVito, and then they get the Niners, who will probably be resting starters by the time that game comes around. So they've got a pretty easy path with their last two games. So if they win this game, they're probably just going to win out and be good to go no matter what. But that's okay as long as there's that seventh spot still open. We would get the seven, the Rams would get the six, Cowboys or Eagles locked into the five, obviously. And I mean, that would be okay. I don't really care about the six versus the seven that much. So we have this other angle here of what about these other teams we're competing with? And one of those teams is the Saints. As of right now, the Saints are a wild card contender. I don't know if they're the seven seed as of right now, but they're right in the mix for one of those wild card spots. They're also in the mix for their division, is the thing. So, I mean, if you really feel confident the Seahawks are going to win out, then I guess we're rooting for the Saints. But if you're not, then I actually think the Rams winning is preferable because it hurts the Saints significantly. And then if the Saints lose to the Buccaneers next week, they're basically done. They're not going to get a wild card. Hard to imagine them getting the division. So that would just take care of them. And also remember, we might get the Saints' third round pick. If they don't make the playoffs, that pick becomes a little bit better. Now, that's a very, very minor part of this. But you put it all together, I actually think we want the Rams to win. So it's very debatable. I think you could argue that it's win win, but what we would need to happen is whatever happens in this game, we need the right things to then happen the following couple weeks. Like if the Rams win this game, that's okay as long as the Saints then lose to the Buccaneers the following week. So there's a lot to untangle here. Hopefully, Seattle wins out so it's not as big of a deal. But for the moment, while we're trying to give ourselves every potential advantage, I think we actually want the Rams to win, but it's very close. And again, if you want to say win win, I'm not going to disagree with that. Bengals, Steelers, AFC on AFC usually doesn't mean all that much. Both of these teams are fighting for a wild card spot, but the Steelers, I mean, they're pretty much dead in the water. The Bengals can still get it. So I think we want the Bengals to win in the sense of more wild card contenders in the AFC to keep the Broncos out so we can have a better chance of that third round pick being a little higher. However, if the Steelers win, our strength of schedule goes up. Also, you might feel a little more confident about the Seahawks beating the Steelers if they're not going into that game on a four-game losing streak. It depends on your perspective. We all know Mike Tomlin sold his soul a long time ago, so we'd never have to go worse than 8 wins in a season. So if he gets to 8 wins in this game, then I guess we're safe in that regard. Yeah, it's kind of tough. It's two pretty minor pieces here. And I think basically you should root for whatever you think makes it more likely we beat Pittsburgh the next week. Would you rather have Pittsburgh going into that game on a one game winning streak, or a 5 game or 4 game, excuse me, 4 game losing streak? Kind of tough, I know. I'm probably going to root for the Bengals, but it can go both ways. Bills, Chargers, again, not a lot here. Pretty awful game. I guess we want the Bills to win because they'll keep alive in the AFC wild card, which makes it a little harder for Denver to get in. But that's really the only angle here. We didn't play either of these teams this year. Again, I'm not really thinking about draft crap anymore. It just seems like a waste of time to me. So yeah, I guess we want the Bills to win. Just because, and when, by the way, when I say I'm not thinking about draft crap, I mean the Seahawks and their pick. Not something like the third round pick we might get from Denver or New Orleans. That's different because it has nothing to do with us. Okay, that gets us to Sunday now. We got the Colts Falcons, and I mean, the Falcons are pretty much dead, but if the Colts want to finish them off, I sure would appreciate it. Just kind of get it over with so we can stop thinking about them. Falcons lose this game. Best they can do then is 8-9, which they probably won't even do. But even if they do pull off 8-9, very unlikely that's going to be enough. And the Colts are another team that is potentially competing for a wild card spot within that division, within that conference. Makes it a little harder for Denver to try to force their way in. Next game that we're looking at here will be Lions Vikings, and again, the Vikings are the one team that could really tip over our apple cart. If the Seahawks win out, and the Vikings win out, and the Rams win out, we don't get in. So the sooner the Vikings take an L, the better. So Lions, wrap up the division, wrap up your top 4 seed, wrap up your home playoff game, take the Vikings down a peg and put them in a position where they're basically on life support, and open up the door for the Seahawks to get in at 9 wins if we end up needing it. So, yeah, we want the Lions to win for sure. I know technically we could catch the Lions, but it would only matter if the Lions don't win the division, which is very, very unlikely. So I'm not even really thinking about that angle. Commanders, Jets. Commanders are eliminated from the playoffs. We don't have to think about them in those terms anymore. The Jets are an AFC team, so I don't think there's anything here really except for the strength of schedule. We played the Commanders, so I guess we want them to win. But it's thin. It's really thin. I can't think of any other angle here, personally. Oh, excuse me. Packers, Panthers. Well, I guess it's a little more valuable for the Packers to lose because if the Packers lose, they're done. They've got 3 games left. If we want to stick the stake in, if we want to go ahead and just finish them off, we need them to lose one of those games. Anyone will do. I'd prefer they lose to the Vikings, but if they lose to the Panthers, that's fine too. It does mess up the draft stuff a little bit in the sense of keeping Arizona away from one of the top picks, but I can live with that a little bit. I still don't think the that pick would go below where Arizona is yet. So I'm willing to live with that and just say if Carolina wants to go on a winning streak, I think that would be the most beneficial in this game. All right. Browns, Texans, no CJ Stroud. So this one already, I mean, then again, Cleveland doesn't have their quarterback either. They're literally down to 4th string. So kind of a weird game here. Not really sure what to make of it. And it's kind of difficult to figure out what you want to do in terms of rooting interest. I'm going to stick with the Texans, though, just because of the first round pick. If they're sending their first round pick to Arizona, we need that pick to go down as much as possible. I think that's worth more than the strength of schedule from the Browns, having played us this year. And it also does kind of really complicate the AFC wildcard picture if Houston wins. But I think hurting that first round pick they're sending to Arizona is worth more. Because, again, if that, I mean, well, the other side of that is they've already hurt it enough by getting to 8 wins. But I think there does exist some real value in making sure that pick continues to go lower. So if Houston can make the playoffs, that would be the ideal. All right, now we're getting to the late window. We got Jaguars at Buccaneers. This is big. I don't know if Trevor Lawrence is playing yet. I don't know if Jacksonville knows, but it would really be nice. It would give us a little bit of cushion if Jacksonville could win. It would muddy the waters in the AFC playoff race, and it would de-muddy the waters or unmuddy the waters in the NFC playoff race. It would just be one more team competing for one of the 7 playoff spots in the AFC if Jacksonville could get off the schneid. And if Tampa Bay loses, that means the NFC South would pretty much would be less likely to produce a wild card team. Let's put it that way. So big Jacksonville fans in the afternoon window for sure. Cardinals Bears. I know the Bears are still alive in the playoff race. I don't care about that. I'm gonna say Cardinals win just to damage their pick a little bit more would be the preferable option, but it's again, I'm not gonna sit here and act like it's a big deal one way or the other. So yeah, I'm gonna say Cardinals. We want them to win just for the draft purposes. Cowboys Dolphins. I mean, Cowboys. We lost to them. They're 3 games ahead of us. We're not catching them. I'm not really thinking about that. Um, I guess there's really not much here. I guess I'd say the Dolphins. I'm rooting for the Dolphins, but there's no real reason for it, right? Technically speaking, there's no objective reason that I can think of. Like, who would you rather have win the division between the Cowboys and Eagles, maybe? But I don't know. I'm torn on that one. I'm not gonna let that be the thing that decides it for me. So I'm gonna root for the Miami, but I don't think there's any particular driving reason to. Sunday night Patriots Broncos. So this is kind of a tough one, right? The Broncos, we might get their 3rd round pick, so we want them to lose. But the Patriots, we don't want their pick to fall behind Arizona's and let Arizona get up into that top 2, top 3, maybe even top 1 at some point. So I'm going to say we want the Patriots to win because I think something that affects us is just a little more valuable than something that affects the Cardinals, but it's pretty tight, and I think you can go either way here, honestly. And then we got 3 games on Monday night. 3 games on Monday night, which are well, not they're not all at night, but they're 3 games on Monday for Christmas. Raiders, Chiefs. Yeah, not much of an angle here. I guess Kansas City wraps up the division if they win, so we kind of want that to keep Denver out of the playoffs, but they're not. Denver's not catching Kansas City in that division regardless, so who even cares about that? So whichever. Giants, Eagles. I think we want the Eagles to win out to try to apply some pressure to the Niners. Actually, now that I think about it, we actually kind of want the Cowboys to win out to apply pressure to the Niners as well. Because we want them to have something to play for week 18. So I take everything I just said back. I think that's the only rooting interest in Cowboys Dolphins. We actually want the Cowboys to win out to apply pressure to the Niners for the same reason we want to apply pressure to the Niners by rooting for the Eagles. And then, of course, this is a pretty big one Monday night Ravens Niners. Definitely hoping the Ravens can win that one and make the 1 seed race a little bit more interesting. All right, that is the rooting guide for this week. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's an angle I'm missing. I will catch you guys later. As always, go Hawks.